Hello, welcome to another episode of 100 to 1 podcast. Here this week, of DJ Wrexx. What's we got in the building?
Yo, it's the Blue Badge King, Mr. Rose.
Just two of us this week. So I guess let's kick off by talking about last week's bets. How you been getting on over the past week?
I think it started to, my early season form started to level out a bit, man. I can't really remember our last weekends, to be honest, but if I can't remember it, clearly I didn't win anything. I did a couple of international week bets over the last few days as well, which started off promising, and then kind of nosedived when I went to South America. But I had some slips that, the first four came in. I think I went back to Moldova, back North Macedonia, I backed France on a handicap, and they all came in. Brazil, Austria on a -1 came in, and then when I got to Colombia, Argentina, they started getting them, started going left end. I mean, Colombia kind of ruined it, which was a surprise because they lost 1-0 against Bolivia. Colombia, a very strong team. Got the likes of Rodriguez and Duran and some quality players, and Bolivia went down to 10 men after 20 minutes and they still beat them. So, Argentina, obviously world champions. They were held against Venezuela. Often with these South American mid-season games, you have to always be mindful about what teams get put out, and sometimes the squads are not. They vary in strength. They vary in terms of who gets released, and for international duty. So it was one of those ones where I don't think Colombia had their strongest, like Duran didn't play.
Yeah, Colombia and Argentina to make the bet fold is definitely.
So Brazil just about got through. They beat Chile 2-1 with a last minute winner as well. But South American football is sometimes a tough one to predict. Like, the nature of their games it's like war. The pitches are not great. They're broken up every 60 seconds with a foul. A lot of cards. You can get red cards. You can get penalties. So they're tough to call. So you might look on paper, this is just a better team than the other, but it's really not that sort of football, unfortunately.
Yeah, the thing is, those games, as you said, maybe good value for cards.
Yeah, definitely good value for cards for sure. Like, cards and fouls for sure.
All right, cool. That's it. Let's roll on to this week's topic.
Yeah, I feel like the most significant event in football over the last week, undoubtedly, is the retirement of an absolute legend, World Cup winner, multiple Champions League winner, European Cup winner, La Liga winner. I'm not sure whether he won the league out in Japan. I have no idea what he's been doing there for the last few years. But of course, if you hadn't guessed, the person I'm talking about is the man Andrés Iniesta himself. Fantastic midfielder, part of obviously Barcelona's golden La Masia generation. Formed an all-time partnership with Xavi Hernandez, or if you like, a trio, if you throw Busquets in there. Widely recognized as the greatest midfielder of all time. Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta. They took that from club level, winning everything at club level, to national level, winning everything at national level. Phenomenal midfielder. I can't speak highly enough of him, basically. World Cup winning goal in 2010, scored the winner against the Netherlands in the World Cup final. Champions League semi-final winning goal against Chelsea, which the Chelsea fans still really, really don't like, because I must concede there was some questionable refereeing in that game. But yes, a late winner at the bridge by Iniesta, steps up when it matters. not the most physically imposing player, but almost impossible to dispossess. So yeah, I just want to give from the 100 to 1 podcast a tribute to Iniesta. Shout out to Iniesta, one of the best to ever do it. The question is he the best to ever do it? And I think that's a very valid question.
You know what though? Basically, I'm just gonna pose the question, and I think every typical English man is gonna. Sure. And you know where I'm going with this.
I know.
If you do a cold night at Stoke, can we say he's the greatest ever? If you never played in the,
I mean, who does that apply to then? Does that apply to Messi, to Xavi, to like as well, to Busquets? So you can take an all-conquering cast of like Barcelona and like largely Spanish international players who have reached the pinnacle of football. They've won everything in the game. Now we cannot basically diminish that by whether they've done it against Stoke. Stoke is not the pinnacle of football. Stoke is not the pinnacle of football. The pinnacle. So that saying is obviously it's a common phrase in English football conversation, and of course I understand the sentiment. People say that maybe ultimately it's like, well, they have performed in the most perfect conditions to play football. The adversity. I mean, the reality is if that Barcelona team came up against Stoke, they'd beat them, comfortably. Stoke were from England, never made it to the Champions League, but the league that they were in, they sent their best teams out there. The teams that beat Stoke every week, they sent them out there to face Iniesta and Barcelona, and they got nowhere near them. So it would be a bit of a stretch to presume that it will be Stoke that will basically be the shortcoming of the likes of Iniesta, where the Chelseas, the Man Uniteds, the Arsenals, the Liverpools have failed over the years. So but yeah, I mean, look, Iniesta, wonderful player. The big debate, I guess, over his career has been sort of Iniesta versus Zidane. Zidane obviously is an advanced midfielder, so in comparison to Xavi, Iniesta probably plays more of a similar type of role to Zidane, and obviously Zidane was a bit older. He had peaked earlier, so I watched it coming. Like it's like this guy's good, this guy's good, this guy's really good, this guy's hang on, like I don't know, is he Zidane good? And that's where the conversation started going. Zidane was a great player. Zidane was a great player. One that I've been guilty of maybe underrating a little bit in the past. Like not that I've never recognized his greatness, but I always thought I feel like his career was largely defined by moments. And he had some great moments in his career, and at the right time. He's in 98 scored 2 goals in a World Cup final. And in 2001, 2 was it, scored a fantastic goal in the Champions League winning final that is replayed over and over again, left foot volley at Hampden Park against Leverkusen. The thing is, when people assess players, you need to show up at the right times in football. Like in terms of how the game recognizes greatness, they look at things like World Cups, they look at things like Champions Leagues. I can say, for example, in 2002, Ronaldo, who I would never say anything bad against, only Messi probably shades him as the best player I've ever seen, but Ronaldo from Brazil, that is. He won the Ballon d'Or in 2002 and probably missed about 9 months of the season injured. And that just highlights the importance of moments, because he was injured for most of the season, came back, was the top scorer in the World Cup, scored 2 goals in the World Cup final, and was crowned the best player in the world. And I think that those things, why I feel that was such an injustice is because that same season, Mikel Ballack dragged Leverkusen to the Champions League final, from midfield, scoring key goals in the semi-finals throughout the campaign, dragged them to the Champions League final, but they lost to Real Madrid and Zidane's famous goal that I've just mentioned. Then he went to the World Cup in the summer and dragged Germany to the final, but they lost to Brazil, and he didn't win anything. And basically, this is what I'm talking about: moments. A winning goal in the World Cup final would have changed the narrative for him. But what his body of work over the course of the season was unrivaled. And I just think, credit to Ronaldo. Ronaldo will go down, is rightly remembered as a better player than Mikel Ballack. But in that particular season, that season, I don't think his body of work was enough. So I say that, going back to Zidane, I think that he was a great player who was elevated a step further by showing up when it mattered in football. So some of the most memorable moments, basically, Zidane was present for, and I think that can't be underestimated as a factor. So, but he was a great player. But I would probably have Iniesta.
That's what I was going to say. Overall body of work, are you putting Iniesta above Zidane?
I would put Iniesta overall. I mean, look, Zidane. I mean, Zidane came.
Yeah, hold on. I keep talking. I'm gonna look at it and see who.
Yeah, Zidane probably came to elite prominence a little bit later than Iniesta. I'm pretty sure he joined Juventus, maybe mid-20s. So even at that point, he was still in Marseille. No, was he Bordeaux? Was he? I can't remember, one of them. I get confused because he was famous for the Marseille roulette, but you would think he was at Bordeaux. Basically, he came to prominence mainly in the international scene, and then went to Italy. Great career in Italy, but if I look at even as a season, an individual season, you talk about number 10s. His era, you had Rivaldo, was the great Brazilian number 10 at that time. Now, I don't think that Zidane has had a greater 38 games than Rivaldo at Barcelona, for example, when Rivaldo, was, for me, he was the best player in the world. I mean, he won Ballon d'Ors in that period as well. And he, I remember he scored big goals in the Champions League against Man United. I remember against all oppositions, got Barcelona to the Champions League famously with a hat-trick on the final day of the season, with that still replayed as one of the best hat-tricks you'll see. I think a free kick, one from 30 yards, and then an overhead kick from outside the box. That level there that he reached as the number 10 that kind of brought Barcelona back. I don't think Zidane has had a season like that at domestic level. But
I'm looking at the stats here, and I hate to, obviously I hate to be a stat merchant here, but just looking at
the stats. No, you have to obviously use it to contextualize all of this stuff as well.
Yeah, a lot more goals in terms of trophies won as well. A lot more major trophies as well, almost double. So he won 32 major trophies in Zidane's 15, and that includes 4 Champions Leagues to Zidane's 2, 10 La Ligas. So Zidane had 2 Serie A and 1 La Liga, and then international World Cup, 2 major trophies at World Cup, and then
I think they should have both won 2, 3 in Iniesta, maybe 3, and then Zidane 2, I would say.
Yeah, so Zidane's got
a World Cup and a European.
And European 2000. 2010 and 2008 and then 2012.
2012,
yeah. So 1 World Cup, 2 Euros.
World Cup, 2 Euros, yeah. So you get that period of dominance. I mean, look, they're not too different. They're very similar periods of dominance in terms of international level, because obviously Zidane won his trophies back to back.
Yeah.
So they won the World Cup in '98. 2 years later, that same team went and won the Euros, basically. So that was obviously a period. If you look at that time, these are unified champions, basically. They're the unified champions, got both belts at once, and I mean, Iniesta's was even more incredible. Spain's was even more incredible.
That's Spain in that period
because they retained their title. Yeah. So that was almost unprecedented. They won the World Euros in 2008, the same team went and won the World Cup in 2010 to have both belts, and then we defended their Euros in 2012. So it was like, at that period, you have to think that's total dominance. Like, total dominance, basically. Unified champions, got both belts, basically, and held them for a few years, you know. So you could have arguments with Zidane and Iniesta and say, like, if you really want to split the hairs, because, yes, obviously these trophies are largely team trophies, and Iniesta was playing at, I would say, more as Zidane was at great teams, but Barcelona was the perfect team. Like, there were great teams, but then there's maybe the best club team, probably like recognized as the best club team of all time. Iniesta is a part of why they were the best club team of all time, of course, but like, that is also a factor. So you're going to sweep maybe trophies when you're part of that Barcelona team, whereas, you know, the Juventus team were the best team in Italy, and that was a golden period for Italy as well, where, you know, Inter Milan was strong. You know, you had even Ronaldo over at Inter, I believe, at the same sort of time. You know, Inter was strong, AC, Shevchenko era. And then in the Champions League, they were not the dominant team. They were one of the best teams, but, you know, I mean, Manchester United beat them in the semis, for example, in '99, when the United won the treble. But we had like back and forth with Juventus around that time. They were one of the greatest teams, but they had Man United at the time. They had Bayern Munich at the time. You know, Real Madrid really weren't really up at that time, to be honest. Neither were Barcelona, to be fair. It was mainly the Italian teams, I would say, Bayern Munich, German teams. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Real Madrid, they did, I think, shortly after that period, because I think Madrid won the Champions League in 2000, I'm sure. What was that night? The year that McManaman scored in the final, I can't remember. But Valencia were also up around that time, one of the strong teams in Europe, I would say. But my point is, Juventus were never that team in Europe like Barcelona were the dominant team in Europe. You know, Barcelona retained, when did they retain the Champions League? They won the Champions League. We won it in 2008. They won it in 2009.
And then they won it in 10-11 as well.
And they lost it in 10. Inter won it. And then they won it in 11. So they didn't retain it. Madrid are the only team to retain it. I'll still never forgive that Barcelona team for 2009. That was like United's, that was like the peak. And basically, Sir Alex ran in to the best club team of all time. And this is why I talk about moments, and these things are so important in shaping your legacy, like in football. Not that United and Fergie don't have a great legacy, but they would have gone down in history. Like, people forget, like, you look at City, for example, at what they're doing at the moment, and you even forget, like, there'll be no debate. I mean, maybe there still isn't a debate, but about the greatest Premier League team, for example, or Premier League manager. Ferguson was like 2 goals away. You look back at it historically, from winning the Premier League 9 years in a row, broken up twice, by like a goal on each time. Like, literally.
Hold on, break that down. Break that down. Make me understand. Break that down.
They won 3 Premier Leagues in a row. I think it was 3 Premier Leagues in a row. 95, they lost the Premier League on the last day of the season. If they had beat West Ham away, they would have won the Premier League. This is when Blackburn won it. So United won it 92, 93, 94.
93, one goal to West Ham.
Basically, they drew 1-1. If they won that game, they would have won the Premier League. They drew 1-1 on the last game of the season. And it was like that Černeček performance in West Ham's goal was still spoken about. Andy Cole hit like so many saves after save. I remember hitting the woodwork potentially. Blackburn won it. Then United went and won it 3 years in a row again. And you think about it now, if not for that, that's 7.
Yeah, that's 7 in a row. Yeah, true.
That's 7 in a row. You know, then I think we lost it to Arsenal. Then United won it a couple of times again. So we were close to winning it 9 times in a row. And the time that or was it maybe Chelsea or something? One of the ones that we lost it was. It might have even been the second gap block. If I look at the list, I'll be able to make more sense of it. But I know that there was 2 that stopped us from winning it 9 times in a row. And those were not like when we didn't win it, we were second, and like we lost the Premier League on goal difference, or by one game, basically on like all of these occasions.
So I guess again that talks to the dominance of the team.
Right, but my point is, but it's not almost good enough to say, because think of the era we would be living in when if we always had to speak about that team that won it 9 years in a row. Like, it's a great team. Everybody knows Ferguson was dominant, but if it was constantly like the thing that, but how do they compare to the United team that won it 9 years in a row? How that?
The legacy is different, definitely. The legacy
is different, but it's the same team. Like, it's one goal here and there. Like, do you know what I mean? It's the same team. It's very difficult to do that. But, you know, and I look at the same in the Champions League. Because around the time when we was that totally dominant in the Premier League, Man United reached the Champions League final 3 times in 4 years.
Yes, it's mad.
But they ran into that Barcelona team. Now, if you think about it, in that time, you could also be looking at a hat-trick of Champions Leagues. Then you now start looking back at that era of now that team is like maybe the greatest club side of all time. And you think about it, the margins are so fine. Man United won the Champions League in 2008 and got to the final again in 2009. And then like got to the final again in 2011.
Yeah, the legacy of that, if that team, the margins are always, with sports, we always say the margins are fine anyway. So if that team had the 1 or 2 goals here or then I reckon the legacy for all of the players involved in that, it's like it's almost the Arsenal invincible team.
And the thing is,
about to this day, the margins are fine. There would have been games that they could have made.
Exactly. I mean, you look back, that invincibility would have been gone in like September or whatever at Old Trafford. They drew at Old Trafford. Van Nistelrooy missed a penalty in the last minute. And that's the margin. It's the margin. You know what I mean? Van Nistelrooy, who don't miss penalties for nothing as well. Like, missed a penalty in the last minute, and that was that. Literally, I think it was like the last kick.
And I don't know, but sometimes it for me just lends into like, not like how serious can you take the legacy, because the margins are people's legacies, because the margins are, and there's a lot of luck with a lot of these.
This is it.
There's a lot of luck. A lot of luck involved.
That's why I don't. You know, this might even be a debate for another day, and you know, Nans is not here to defend his people, but I'll say very honestly, I've never considered Arsenal's invincibility as the greatest Premier League record.
No, I don't think so. I think
because it could have been. It could have been if they were, but they were not. That doesn't tell the story of the dominance. Like, if that penalty goes in, they still win the league, but it's not like this is the greatest team ever. It wasn't, you know, that record for me doesn't make them the greatest team. That wasn't the greatest team. What do you call it? I think that they drew a lot of games, more games than other teams have drawn. Like, say, City teams or Chelsea teams have won the Premier League by losing a game or 2 and winning more than that Arsenal invincible team. You know,
because it's more recent. The whole Leverkusen unbeaten in. And that's across all competitions as well. I think that's probably more impressive as well, because I feel like the invincible thing with Arsenal is obviously only in the league as well. So
I just think that, you know, they drew too many games for my liking. So that didn't, in real time, it didn't create that era of the dominance in the way that even, let's say, City, who have never gone invincible, have done. City winning 17, 18 in a row. Like, Arsenal weren't doing that during their invincible era. So for me, the most impressive Premier League record, and this is a digression, is Chelsea's defensive record. I think 2,500 Mourinho conceding 15 goals in a season is ridiculous. Like, Man United may have conceded 15 already, like, this season, for all I know. Like, I haven't done the maths. They won't be far off of it. Like, they won't be that far off of it. There's certainly teams that have conceded 15 already, like probably in the top half of the league even. You know, so Chelsea conceding 15 goals across 38 games.
How many points did they finish that season?
And that season was like 95 points as well, I believe. And that, for me, that team is better than the Invincibles. They won the league. They I think maybe lost a game late on or early on. You know, and then basically they won more games, conceded like a ridiculously low number of goals, but because somebody had beaten them, I think they'd even been beaten after the league was won already. Like, so, you know, That is for me. That seems better.
You know what?
Then of course, Man United in '99. You got to give it to them. They won the treble.
It'll be a good debate. We'll wait for Namdi and OG to be.
That would be a good conversation about the greatest Premier League team, to be honest, because there's strong arguments for a lot of teams, including the Invincibles, because that would be their argument. Well, nobody's got Invincible, so which is valid, but that's not the strongest team for me. Not the strongest team for me. But just in conclusion, I'll say Iniesta for me. I'll put him number one. In terms of certainly those types of midfielders, the creative midfielders, attacking midfielders of his era. Unless you want to drag Ronaldinho into it, but I would not bring Ronaldinho into this one. I think his best work was done in the front three, on the left of the front three, certainly. But I know that Ronaldinho and Zidane were compared a lot, so maybe it'd be unfair to say, oh, well, you can't compare him to Iniesta if you can compare Zidane to Iniesta. But I think that was the main difference. I think Ronaldinho was more of a forward player. He would score a lot more goals than both of them. So I don't think that's the best comparison. He played with Iniesta, do you know what I mean? Like in the same team. So to compare them is not really fair, I would say. But Iniesta, I'll give him the crown.
Last of a golden generation, to be fair. That generation is...
Yep. I mean, Messi's still out there putting in meshing work somewhere in Miami. But Messi's different gravy. And, credit to him. I'm happy he got his World Cup last year as well, because that crowned it. Or was it last year? Maybe 2 years ago now. That crowned it. They'd always have this debate. And that shows the significance of that in his legacy, as great as Messi has been. Probably unanimously the greatest player to ever play the game. We're still saying, but would it be the same if he doesn't win this one trophy? Do you know what I mean? So
football fans always be moving the goalpost anyway. So
at these moments, it shows the significance of these moments, because often people will compare him and Cristiano and be like, well, Cristiano had won the Euros with Portugal and Messi hadn't won an international tournament. So it's like these were their margins. And if they retired like that, that would be an argument used to advance one side, basically. So again, so going back to Zidane, not only was he winning them, but the role that he played in winning them were like some of the most memorable moments in football in his era. And he was, you scored 2 goals in a World Cup final. That is, you can't really get much bigger than that. And then World Cup final, Champions League final, these are moments that just took him over the edge. And I think he was better in 2000 than he was in 98 when France won the Euros. But again, in terms of memorableness, I think he might have won the Ballon d'Or that year as well. But I think he won it in 98 for sure. Actually, maybe let me not get my facts right, because that could have been R9 as well, actually. But even then, if he won it in 98, which I think he did, similar. R9 at that time came into that tournament recognized as pretty much the best player in the world. He was the top scorer in the World Cup. Got to the final, famously got sick in the final, couldn't play in the World Cup final against France. France won. Then the story goes. Those moments, you need to be crowned. At your moment, you need that crowning moment. And it was the moment for R9 to push his legacy. His legacy is already, but if he had one more game, scored and won the World Cup final, then that now is in time forever and ever, basically, in terms of his legacy. Some people then, over time, people don't forget how good he was at that time. So when people are talking about the greatest player ever, people think, some younger people will think, no, Ronaldo doesn't really, because he didn't do it for long enough, or he didn't. I'm saying these moments, and he won 3-4 Ballon d'Ors anyway. But if he did that in 98, let's say won that World Cup, he came back and won it in 2002 as well, and scored in the final. In that one, I think that beyond doubt, we'll be talking in that greatest of all time. And these are the margins. One game here, one game there. These are the details.
Your legacy can change, good or bad, just over.
Because the thing is, people are lazy. Not lazy, but there's too much football. So when it's all said and done, as time goes on, we can only really remember the headlines. It's who remembers all of some people remember, but the body of work that Zidane put together across 2002 compared to they won this, he scored that goal and that goal. People don't remember the rubbish games that they had. Yeah,
true. The thing is, it's weird because it's if you weren't there, then you won't you won't get it in it. It's just like how people talk about, like, I don't know, Forest in the 70s, Brian Clough.
Yeah.
It's like we would just never get it. We look at Forest.
But the thing is with Forest is they have
team.
that. Even though you speak about Forest in the 70s, as good as they were, they're still spoken about that because they won the European Cup.
Yeah,
they were just a good team in the 70s. They would not be talking that didn't win anything. They were just, like, let me think, who's about now? Like, I don't know. That didn't really, let's say Arsenal. No. Let's say Arsenal in 30 years, no one's going to talk about Arsenal of the 2020s. If they didn't win, they don't have a win league or Champions League. There was 30 years ago, they just played really good football. Like, it's just
they were competing.
Yeah, like they were competing. Nobody was going to care. For this team to go down and be remembered, they have to win trophies, big trophies. Like, so that is now, then everybody remembers the team that won those trophies and say that was a great team, like the Barcelona team, But being a good team is not enough. Like Forest are remembered because they won the European Cup in that time. Liverpool won like Europe 5, I think, in the 80s, 70s and 80s or something like that. So, that is what makes you remembered. Being a good team, I don't remember who they were competing against. They were probably good as well. They fell short. Yeah. Who they were beating in the finals of these cups were good teams as well. I don't really remember them.
Yeah, it's true. History favors the victor, innit? That's it, really.
History favors the victor. That's it. And that's why players make moves, even at the top sometimes, to get their hands on the trophies. So, you look at Figo switching from Barcelona to Real Madrid and stuff like that. It's like he was a good player, but he needs the legacy to go with it, basically, Yeah.
All right, cool. I guess we'll wrap up on that and we'll roll on to this week's bets.
Right. What have I got? I mean, yeah, so I mentioned earlier, so I've done a bit of international football. I'm putting together another one at the moment, which I might call it quits at this. It's a little fivefold. I'm going for my same sort of handicap formula. So I got Kosovo to beat Lithuania by -1, so by more than one goal. Bulgaria -1 home against Luxembourg. I've got Romania -1 against Cyprus. I've got North Macedonia to beat Armenia. I think that's tomorrow, that game. And to complete it, I've actually gone to a league game, which is in Wales, and I've gone for TNS, the New Saints, to beat Cardiff Metropolitan by 3 or more goals. And that's a fivefold, and that's 212 to 1.
What's the odds on that -3, by the way? Just
6 to 5. That's all. Like, they're heavily favorites. For TNS to win the game is like 1 to 8.
Okay, so
I'm just kind of
gonna get smashed, basically.
Basically, like, so. But the thing is, TNS have not been in recent games. Like, they've not been there. They haven't had that air of invincibility that they normally have. Like, they've lost 3 out of their last 5. But they're by far the most dominant team in that league. They've beaten Cardiff, who they're playing today. They've won their last 4 games against them, and that was all in 2024. Only in one of those games they've conceded, which was a game that they won 6-2. And then out of the other 3 games, one of them they won 5-0, one they won 4-0, one they won 8-0. Okay. So all of them they've won by the 3 or more that I've backed today, But the issue is TNS lost their last game. They won the one before that 6-1, but then they've lost, a couple games before that as well, then 4-0. So they've hit a bit of a rocky patch. So that adds the element of risk. Normally TNS you go and look at their recent record, they're usually 5 for 5, But 2 out of 5 is not like them. But I'm still backing them. Yeah. They're at home.
Cool. So is that your main one for this week?
Yeah, that'll be it really for the weekend. The thing is with the international games as well, because I did have some ideas about like fouls and shots, but it's just predicting the lineup. So it's very difficult to do an accumulator. These games kick off at different times, and your bet will be done by the first one. If your players don't start, then it's like no point. So it's like you can't even wait to see all the lineups because they're at different times as well, 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So if I pick players to have shots or players to have fouls, I don't know if they're going to play really. So that's the difficulty with that.
you know what? If you come up with anything, I guess just add it to the Twitter, innit?
Yeah. Just post it. I'll post this one as well.
Or X, whatever it's called. Yeah, post that with that one as well. I guess with that said, if there's only one this week, international is always a bit quiet. Maybe later on in the season when we have more international breaks, there'll be a bit more form on the table. But yeah, still pretty early on. So
I actually like international games. Like generally, I think that there's more. There is more of a pattern, like with them. You know, I did quite well in the last international break, and I'd earmarked this one. I thought, like, you know, hopefully I can get a win over this period. Like generally, the teams that are supposed to win, but South America is a techie one, and that one I knew that there was risk attached when I added them, but I added them to fill out my slip, and the South American legs failed before, but the Europeans, like generally, the teams that were supposed to win won.
That said, I was going to say England and Greece, but
that game I stayed away from that. I wasn't. I think it's an understanding of international football. Like I knew that Greece were like. Didn't say I'm not going to say that. Oh, I knew Greece were going to win, but I was not. I couldn't with the confidence put England to beat Greece. I knew that I wasn't sure about that game, so I wasn't surprised when I saw. I didn't even watch the game, but when I saw that, Greece is won, I thought, right, this is why I stayed away from that game. And this was about 4 or 5 different slips. I didn't touch that one, and I was touching safer games that I considered to be safe. I didn't put that in that category. International football is not like club football, so like if you have 2 decent teams, like or 2 good teams, if the other team is good enough, then you might not win. So like even against like a Slovakia or like England, they're not always guaranteed to beat these teams. Like, but you do get a lot of mismatches where you have teams where they can't possibly not beat. You get those in the way that you don't get them in club football. So you will get England versus like Latvia or Lithuania, and you just know that England are going to win. So you get those opportunities to have like good handicap wins, basically, I think. But when their gap is, if they're in the same league, like if they're equivalent of like a Premier League, if they're in the same at that level, not really guaranteed. Except when you talk about like teams like Spain at their best, who were like almost like a club team that had, you know, that dominance. The national teams always disappoint. Like over generations, you always think, oh, this collection of players been a letdown. They went out of the group in the Europe, it's not the same like that. But why I like international football, because it sounds like maybe I'm contradicting myself, is that it does throw clearer mismatches as well. So that you can confidently back to just say, because the gap between some of these teams, you look at some of these teams that all of their players play in the Maltese league or wherever they play, like you can get them play a team where I know that, okay, their players play not even all in the Premier League, just across France and Belgium and Portugal, stuff like that. They're going to win. And invariably they will, like, because it's just the gap is too much. But you won't get that at domestic level, that level of a gap. Like club level.
Carabao Cup or
unless it's like that, basically. So you do get a lot of clear ones. But when it's closer, so like some of the South Americans, even like, you know, it's not that easy basically to predict.
I hear it. All right, cool. On that, I guess we'll wrap up. Any closing words? Stay in there.
Let's keep going, man. Let's get this money, guys. You know, and full speed ahead. Good luck for the weekend's bets, guys.
All right. Peace out. Peace.